Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have just an absolutely amazing upload to share with you. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this upload, shall we? Alright, so before we jump into the upload, I like to thank subscribers when they send me gifts. It's my way of showing my appreciation. Because, one, I don't expect anything, and two, it is just an amazing gesture from you guys. So, Simone from Australia had sent me a great t-shirt last week, Bigfoot, Yeti, and Yowie. So she said there was one more or two more gifts coming, and Sunday I received this book, the Yowie File, and it is a really interesting book. Some historic kind of like write-ups from the Sydney Morning Herald, and then some really interesting first-hand accounts. It's all really well documented sightings of the Yowie, and just a really cool book. I mean, it's really, really a nice book. And Tony Healy and Paul Cropper, great book. Thank you, Simone. I really appreciate it. I glazed through it a little bit, and a lot of it, I like how it was put together because it is historical newspaper articles that documented sightings of these. And I, a long while ago, I had did a couple uploads on historic newspaper documentation on Bigfoot, Wildman, Dogman. There's ranging from like write-ups from the 1500s all the way up till the early 1900s. And that's what that book reminds me of. So thank you, Simone. I really appreciate it. And books, to me, books are the best gift ever because they're just, I never get sick of them, you know. So let's jump into this upload. All right, so I had talked to a subscriber Saturday afternoon while prepping for the live stream. Live stream every Saturday at 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, but the majority of Saturday is usually spent prepping for that live stream and just kind of getting amped up. But I had ended up talking to a subscriber named Ray, and Ray and his friend back in 2008 had gone on a adventure, a backpacking adventure to the most remote place in the United States, I guess. Remote cabin in the United States. And that's in Cody, Wyoming. And it's a place called Thoroughfare Ranger Station. And this backpacking trip, they had taken some time, planned this great trip, because he and I had talked about it for a while, and just an amazing and horrific experience. But first and foremost, I am not like other channels. I don't tell stories. I don't, if a subscriber sends me an experience, I'll narrate it. But when I talk to a subscriber, I write down key points of what they are telling me. And then I usually, right after the conversation is over, I'll jump on and start recording what was told to me. I'm not a storyteller. I'm a researcher. I have always felt like I'm not a YouTuber. I just like researching. I like learning. And, if you've been with this channel for a long time, I like to research unexplained or media cover-up animal attacks. And the Tom Mezek case, the missing 411 case up here. Fascinated by those. Fascinated by a lot. But I'm not a storyteller, first and foremost. So, if you don't like the way I share the experience, I'm not going to apologize. It's just the way I do it. There's plenty of other channels that will tell you a creepypasta story, word for word, reading it right out of a book. I'm getting this from somebody who's sharing it with me, and I'm sharing it with you the way they shared it with me. So let's get into this. All right, so 2008, subscriber named Ray, he and his best friend, who we will leave nameless because that's what Ray requested. Ray was 26 at the time. His friend, he believes his friend was 27 or 28. He's a year or two older than him. And they decided that they wanted to go on this very remarkable hike. He wanted to do it while he was still young enough and it wouldn't affect his body, because this is a hike that you really need a couple days hiking in and a couple of days hiking out, on top of time to walk around and explore. So they had taken 10 days of their time, and they had accrued time off. Actually, Ray was not working at the time. He had, apparently he had started a kind of like a startup project, sold that, and had some money that he was sitting on, and decided, hey, this is probably the only time in my life that I will have a chance to do this. And he had always heard about this thoroughfare ranger station. And it is technically the most remote place in the United States, being 32 miles away from any road or anything. You really, horseback ride in is about a day's trip. So that's how remote it is. I know that other people will probably say, well, there's this place and that place. I looked into it, and it is, per the U.S. government, the most remote place on the not on the planet, in the United States, in the lower 48. Excuse me, the lower 48. Obviously, Alaska is going to have a little bit more remoteness, but in the lower 48, this is it. Now, they had started out, everything was great. They were up by the Yellowstone Lake area, and what they were going to do is they were going to hike down to another cabin called Fox Creek Patrol Cabin. And these are just ranger stations that are remote, there's nothing, there's no amenities. There's an outhouse, a bed, a bunk, maybe 2, maybe 3, log stove, some wood, and, you're roughing it. And it's truly something beautiful, because I actually had taken a couple of hours and looked at a lot of the pictures that he sent me, and then I went online and proceeded to look as well. So they start and they spend a lot of their time hiking to the Fox Creek patrol cabin. It took them about a day to get from where they started to get to that first cabin. And that is a very remote piece of land as well. It's located kind of at the southern end of Yellowstone Lake. And I believe that is Yellowstone Lake. Hang on one second. Yeah, it's the Yellowstone Lake. So it's at the southern end. Table Mountain or Tabletop Mountain is adjacent to it. And so you're just surrounded by this, on top of being in Yellowstone, which is absolutely gorgeous. Imagine being where there's no tourists. There's no Karens, there's no Chads that are, messing with the animals and doing just dumb stuff. It's just you, your buddy, and you're on a mission to just have a blast, and respect the land that you're walking on. So they get to this Fox cabin, and they're just blown away at how remote it is, yet how beautiful it is. It's like almost like going back in time to like 1930s to an old ranger cabin, lost in time. Nothing of any. It was completely uneventful for the first 3 days. Actually, a little longer than that. They were 4 days in. So for the first 4 days, uneventful. And as they decide to head to Thoroughfare, which on a really nice day, and with no kind of physical obstacles, weather obstacles, anything, we're talking somewhere between 12 to 15 miles of a hike. So 5 to 6 hours, just a straight hike down. And that's when everything kind of started to get a little weird, is during that hike. They proceeded to hike down through. They were about halfway through this trail system when they could see to the east the Trident Ridge or Trident Plateau to the east of them. So they knew they were about halfway to the Thoroughfare Ranger Station, and they heard this really loud kind of echo, this just thunderous roar coming about. And they stopped hiking because they hadn't heard anything like this. It was just this just loud, and then they knew what it was right when they heard it. It was helicopters. But they hadn't heard anything remotely this loud in 5 days now. This would be their 5th day going in. And they stop and they look at each other and they're like, huh. And what they're just standing up on this trail. They're looking up and they're trying to figure out what is, going on. They see 2 just jet black helicopters, not shiny black, but like almost like a matte black helicopter two of them fly over, fairly low as well. And they both kind of look at each other. And his friend said to Ray, "Oh, maybe there's someone lost or someone's hurt on the other side of the park, and maybe that's search and rescue or park rangers coming in to help with whatever. But wow, that's really weird." And to be such a nondescript color, there's this matte black. Now, if you are familiar with the military, matte black on planes and other kinds of aerial vehicles is used to deflect radar and not to be too visible with the naked eye. So that immediately, Ray had knew that from being in the service. He had been in the Air Force. But he kind of looked at his buddy and he's like, "Nah, I don't think so." He goes, "I think those were definitely military helicopters." But, and they proceed to walk, to finish this hike up to get to the thoroughfare. It was that was the start of where everything really changed. The mood, because at that point, for Ray, not for his friend, possibly for his friend, but for Ray is when he started to think. He's like, why, as they're hiking, why would two military helicopters be flying over this part of Yellowstone at such a, low altitude? It really doesn't make any sense. And he is just thinking about this, kicking it around for the next 2.5 hours until they get to the thoroughfare. As they are entering the property of the thoroughfare, they notice this kind of lone cabin sitting there. They see what looks to be another cabin, but it's not. There's a corral there, and that other, what they seem to be a cabin, is technically a barn. It's not a barn as we would think. It's more like a garage, but it is a barn. And this kind of the most remote outhouse in the United States, in the lower 48, is kind of sitting off to the side. And they walk in and they are kind of hit with this just awe-inspiring mood, because at this point they are both aware, hey, we made it. Like, that was one of the jokes, is I cannot, and guys are weird, and every guy will agree with what I'm saying. They had, like, who was going to take the first number 2 in the most remote outhouse in the United States. And it was just like a running joke for them. But, you walk into a place where there is nothing around you. There's no bickering. There's no kids. There's no, any kind of distractions. It's just you, your friend, in nature. In this kind of set back in time, it's almost like literally stepping back into like the 1940s or 50s. It's so remote and just so old, very beautiful place, I guess. Now they are really just kind of blown away and awestruck, but they're beat as well. They literally just hiked 6 hours, somewhere between 12 to 15 miles in, and they take their packs off, and these aren't light day packs. These are heavy hiking packs, 80, 90-pound packs. Just everything that you need in those 10 days are on your body. And so they take their packs off and they kind of just sit down and take it all in. They're really just they haven't even explored the area yet. They just sat and took it all in. And about 20-30 minutes go by and they get up and they start to walk, and they put their bags up onto this porch area of the ranger station. And they walk over to the corral and over to the barn area. And obviously they went to look at the outhouse. And as weird as that sounds, and he said, Jeff, as weird as that sounds, because I was like, ew, I mean, in Boy Scouts, at Boy Scout camp, that's what we used was outhouses, and ew. But this is totally different. This is seldom people are there, and those people that do get to go there and hike that far, show the respect, so they're just now appreciating all of that hard work that they just went through. They get set up, and at this point, they were allowed to go into the cabin. He believes now, or at sometime, he thinks in like 2020 up to now, that the doors and there's no more camping in there. But you could actually stay in camp for a couple of days there. Obviously there's, restrictions and stuff, but, so they get in and they just kind of undo their packs, set up their bunk, and he kind of plops down because he's just tired. You get up first thing in the morning, eat something, have a cup of coffee, and hike. So he kind of lays down, and as he's laying there, he kind of dozes for a second. Not long, but he dozes just enough to where you realize, oh shit, I just zonked off for a second. And his buddy comes through the door and he says, dude, those helicopters are coming back this way. He goes, do you hear them? And he kind of opens his eyes and he's just laying there and he's listening and listening. And he gets up off his bunk and he walks out onto the porch, kind of looks, and he can hear them. And, just this thunderous noise. And he goes, those aren't those same helicopters. He goes, and he turns and he looks, and sure enough, there's two more helicopters going the same way the first two did. And now he's just like, that's really weird. That's just really strange. These were not blacked. These were definitely that military army green color. And he's looking and he's just like, And he doesn't say anything to his friend. His friend's kind of like, someone must be really, disappeared or, whatever. There's probably, hiker gone missing, yada, yada. And he's like, yeah, maybe. He's like, but I don't think so. He's like, I really don't know what to make of it. And they kind of give it, just blow it off, like he saw 4 helicopters. But it bothered him because of the fact, one, he had been in the Air Force and was kind of aware of strategic flight patterns and where helicopters would go and why they would travel at such a low altitude, especially over a national park. But he doesn't say any of this to his friend because, one, he doesn't want to freak him out, and 2, he doesn't want to look like a weirdo. So they just go on with their day, and they end up making dinner and going to bed. His friend was the first one to do the outhouse duty, though. The most remote outhouse in the lower 48. And that kind of, he said that kind of got me. I was kind of mad about that one because I really wanted the, that notch on my belt, you know? And so they end up crashing out, and sometime they went to bed at like 8:30, 9 o'clock, real early. They were just completely exhausted. So sometime at around maybe 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, he had gotten a good clip of sleep. And he was rested. So when he was woken up by his friend, he was like, okay, you know, you got a hard sleep. You could use a little more, but you know, you got a good 4 or 5, maybe 6 hours of sleep in you. And his friend's like, dude, there is something outside of the cabin right now. He goes, I don't know what it is. He goes, but I got up to go to the bathroom. He goes, and I started to walk towards the front door. He goes, and I heard this like loud thunk on the back side of the cabin. So opposite side he was going. He goes, I stopped. He goes, and I looked out the window. He goes, and I swear to God that I saw what looked like a bear out there. He goes, I don't know what to do. He goes, but I gotta pee. And his Ray gets up and he kind of looks out the window and he's like, I don't see anything. He goes, well, where did you see it? And he's like, over there. And Ray goes to the next window and goes to the back, and there's a small kind of like port window that he kind of peeks out and looks. He's like, well, it's not here. It must have taken off, you know. He goes, I'll walk with you. He goes, just in case, but hang on. And he proceeded he had a pistol in his pack, and he grabbed his pistol out, and he had a .44 with him. So he grabbed that, and he said, all right, let's go. He goes, I got to go to the bathroom too. He goes, probably get a little more sleep and then make breakfast. And I'd like to go over to, there's another mountain range that he wanted to check out and stuff. They were going to stay here for a day or two more. As they are walking towards the outhouse, and the outhouse is a good clip away, it's just past the barn and corral, they hear what sounds like movement in the woods opposite side of the cabin. And they both kind of stop and they're looking, and you know, they're literally at a dead stop, and they're just kind of, because it doesn't sound, it did not sound like a human. It sounded too large to be a bear. But it just, there was something very unnerving about what they heard. It was almost like something too big trying to be very quiet, is the best way he described it. So kind of like when a little kid is trying to be quiet, they always kind of make they always make noise. Well, this is what it sounded like. Like it was just something too big trying to be very quiet, but you're faintly hearing every movement it makes. You're hearing the trees move and crack and stuff. And so they both stop and they look. And his friend has his flashlight and he had it pointed down, and he puts the light up. And Ray immediately pushed his flashlight down and said, don't. Just don't. He goes, let's hear whatever it is. He goes, I don't think that's a bear. He goes, I don't know what it is. He goes, but let's keep the flashlight down. He goes, whatever it is knows that we're here. He goes, but let's not put a target on our back right now. And even though his friend had the flashlight on, but he just, you know, he goes, let's go back by the cabin. He goes, we'll piss over there away from the cabin, but there's something not right now. Let's just take a leak and go into the cabin as quick as possible. Let's not jeopardize this. There's a rule not to, like, if you've got to pee, don't pee in the surrounding area of the cabin. Use the outhouse. And they did. He broke the rule. Just because how unnerved he was. He knew immediately that something was not right this evening in that area. And he just wanted to get back into the safety of the cabin. It's not entirely like something could easily bust through it, but at least there's some walls, a door between you and whatever else is out there. And that's all he was worried about at that time. So they do their duty. They jump back into the cabin. There's like on the inside, there's a wood kind of slat to put on the thing. And an old kind of master lock. But you don't have the key. He didn't have the key. No one has the key. It's just there. You do lock it. Like, I guess the Rangers would lock it at the end of the season or whatnot. But they do put that wood board down, and he lays back down on his bunk, and his buddy keeps talking to him, and he's like, "What do you think that was?" He goes, I thought that was a bear. His friend was adamant about it being a bear. And he said, when I got to the door almost and I turned around and looked out that window, he goes, it wasn't like it was walking away. He goes, I just saw this like shadow of something really big kind of walking towards the cabin. He goes, I didn't physically see it. He goes, I just saw this large shadow. And Ray's like, maybe it was a bear, maybe with the way the moon is angled, and the moon had been up for a little bit, but it was kind of cloudy. So he was like, maybe it was, who knows? We're in the cabin. Whatever it was is out there. And they both kind of nodded off for the rest of the evening. They wake up next morning, get up, kind of stretch. All of that is out of his head now. He's not even thinking about what just occurred the night before. He's not thinking about the helicopters. He's just like, oh, wow, I feel great. I feel refreshed. Because now he had gotten a lot more sleep than the few nights that they were at the first cabin, and then the night that they camped outside, getting to the Fox Creek Patrol cabin. So this was like essentially the first good night of sleep both of these guys had gotten in 5 days. Now they get up, they go outside, stretch. They start the log stove just a little bit, fire it up just a little, do their coffee and such, and have some breakfast. As they're waiting for the coffee water to heat up on the log stove, they're just sitting on the porch. And his friend commented on, there's a non-smoking sign that's off to the side on the wall. And he said, Jesus, who would smoke a cigarette out here after walking all that way, after hiking all of that way that we did? Who the heck would smoke a cigarette out here? It's just too beautiful to even want to smoke a cigarette out here. And for some reason that stuck in his head, was his friend noticing that sign. And then right after it was almost immediately after the sky, the surrounding area just is thundering. And you hear really, really low, these 4 helicopters flying back the way they had come the night before. And the altitude of them is just dangerously low for the area they were at. Because behind the cabin is, mountains. These helicopters were not that high off the ground. And so they're watching it, and he's like, his friend immediately goes, yeah, they are definitely military, aren't they? And Ray said, yeah, I think so. And he notices one kind of veer off course and almost go over the cabin, and then kind of go back into the formation that the 4 were in. They were in a formation flying to wherever they were going. But it broke formation just briefly, enough to go over the cabin and back into formation and go. His friend said, dude, did you see that? He goes, I think they know we're here. He's like, that's crazy. They did have permission to be there. It was just, you just saw a helicopter break formation, fly over the cabin that you're at, and, go back into formation. And they're just kind of like, well, yeah, that was really weird. Ray had no input on it at that point. He had nothing to say. They're into now mid-afternoon. And as they are kind of figuring out what they're going to do on there, because what they're going to do is they're going to relax today, kind of just hike around the area, not go too far, but hike around the area. And then the next day, push about a 4 to 5 hour hike the opposite direction of where they're going to have to go the last day of their stay there. And as they're just looking at a map and figuring everything out, they hear what they now knew was 2 horses coming into camp. They could hear the footsteps of these 2 horses. They both kind of look off the porch as they're looking at the map, and they see these 2 horses with 2 park rangers on the horses walking into thoroughfare. And Ray kind of just looks up and kind of waves, hey, how are you? Wave. The rangers take their horse, they get off their horse, tie their horse up, and the first thing out of their mouth is, the first words out of the ranger's mouth is, he verifies their names, like just, Ray blank and blank blank. Yup, that's us. How are you, sir? And he said, I got some bad news. The park is closed right now. We had kind of a little emergency happen, and a good section of the park is closed, and unfortunately, you are in that section right now. We're going to have to ask you, we're not going to stay and escort you out. You're not in any trouble, but park is closed, and we're going to ask you to, at least pack up and head out. It's getting kind of late right now. We know you've got to hike back out. So take off in the morning, head back up to Fox Creek Patrol, where you spent the 2 nights there, and then head out, but it's going to be closed for quite, some time right now. And it's just best that you're not in the park right now. His friend goes, does it have anything to do with those helicopters that we saw go over here a little while ago? And the one ranger that didn't get off his horse is looking at them both, Ray and his buddy, and he says, you guys saw helicopters. What are you talking about, helicopters? Just a really bullshit way of saying, are you sure that's what you saw is helicopters? Are you sure about that? And Ray said, just a couple of helicopters. We heard them come over the valley and go over the ridge, but, we'll leave. We'll leave in the morning. Are you sure you don't want us to leave now? We're more than happy to. We've got enough time. We'll make it to Fox Creek at just about, late dusk, but we'll still leave if that's what you want us to do tonight. And the one ranger that's off his horse, no, you're good. Just, tomorrow morning, immediately, head out. All right, thank you, and yada, yada. And his friend said, how did they know our names? And he said, we signed in. We signed, everywhere we've gone, we've signed that we were here. How wouldn't they know our names? So now they're like, all right, they're planning on getting out. His buddy is just like full of questions. What do you think? Why do you think the park's closed? And this and that. And Ray's kind of just off. He's like, something's not right. Something's just not right. They don't close an entire park. They usually, if they do, it's mainly for a fire. But like even and we were talking about this, there's parts of the Adirondack Park that just will get closed. I've read there's portions of where LBL, they'll close certain trails or, just certain swaths of land in those parks. Reconstruction of a bridge, tree fell down, just something like that. It's got to be something major. It's not a missing hiker. It's not, something small. They wouldn't close it if there was a bear attack, because actually at one point Ray started to think, maybe it was a bear attack. Maybe a bear attacked somebody, and then he's like, but that wouldn't make sense. He's like, those helicopters wouldn't fly in. So they're just going about, they're packing their pack. They brought out what they would need for the evening. And their change of clothes, whatnot, this and that. What they can easily what they need for the night, but put everything else back in. For easy, get up, eat, have coffee, and get out of here. And they do that. At one point, they're sitting around and they're playing a quick game of cards. His friend had a little flask with him. They each took a couple snippers of the flask. And it's starting to get dark. And they hear that noise again, that almost deliberate, something too big, deliberately trying to be quiet in the woods. They're sitting on the porch outside of at the station, and they're looking like that, and almost as they are looking, they hear a couple of, like, just instantly, Ray knew what it was. So we're sitting and we're looking, and he goes, I hear a rifle report. And then I hear another one. And then I hear another one. And then I hear another one. He said, I heard about 10 shots from a rifle. He said, and it wasn't like semi-automatic. It was in a burst, you know, boom, 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 boom. And he's, you know, like, what the fuck? Instantly, he said, what the fuck? Because he's just, and he looks, and he sees 7 obvious soldiers come running through, and they're running towards the area where they heard that noise. And one points at them and says, stay there. Just stay there. They can't see where they went because of the angle of the wall, the outside wall, but they're trying to peek over to see where and what is going on. And as they're looking this way, you know, off to the side, they hear another group of people talking, comms. They hear comms. They don't hear rifle report, but they hear comms and movement. And they turn back the opposite side, and they see another group of 7 to 8 guys running the same way these guys went, just opposite side. So they're closing in on something. Ray looks at his friend and goes, get in the fucking cabin. Just get in the cabin. Let's get in the cabin. Shut the door. Whatever's going on, we don't know what's going on. Let's not be a part of it. Let's, you know, try to stay as safe as possible and out of everyone's way. If they want to talk to us, they'll tell us to leave now. Whatever. Park rangers already told us that we have to, you know, be out of here in the morning. We already know that it's closed, so let's just, and it's on them to notify us what they want to do. So they do. They go into the cabin and they're kind of just peeking out the window, and they don't hear any more rifle report. So their obviously curiosity has now killed the cat. Both are now like, what's going on, you know? And they kind of come to the decision, let's go on the porch. Let's stay on the porch so we know we're safe. But if they want to talk to us, they can at least notify, hey, you know, we know you're here. Stay, leave, whatever, da-da-da. But at least we know what's going on, and they don't have to, you know, come up and bother us. So they get on the porch, and they peer off to the last side that they were on, and they don't see anything. But they can hear talking, they can hear comms, and so they walk over to where the steps are to get off to the side, and they peek. And as they both kind of look, they see something, movement. They see movement. It's now darker. It's now right about dusk, to where your eyes start to play tricks on you. And they see something, like they see movement coming off the backside where the corral would be. And it's open in this area. It's fairly open. There's trees all along the, you know, you're surrounded by forest, but it is open. It's cut, you know, so you can have an open area. And they're looking, hear the comms, see this thing, movement. They see movement, and they immediately like, what is, and then they hear that burst of gunfire again. This time mixed with 3-round burst with automatic, and very authoritative commands, not to them, but to whoever is talking to who. And, more gunfire. And they see the tail end of this thing kind of running. And he said, you know what? How a gorilla runs on all fours when it uses all fours to move very rapidly when it wants to move rapidly. And he goes, and I've heard of Bigfoot being able to move on all fours as well. He said, whatever this was quadruped running, but it looked so strange, but it was moving so quick. It looked like almost like a gorilla, like a silverback gorilla, just running on all fours, which looks very strange, but there is quick movement out of that result. And they're like, what the hell? Because it's huge. It is absolutely enormous. 9 feet at a shoulder. And it runs, the gunfire is, they don't see it connecting, but they're imagining it's hitting it because it's going towards, the gunfire is aimed towards this thing running away from whatever. And it gets just past the area where the corral is, and it stands up. And from the angle that they were at and how where the sun is setting, they could see that this was not a silverback gorilla, and it was not a Bigfoot. It was clearly a humanoid. It looked like a large man that appeared to have like some sort of skin covering, like Native Americans would wear, like a pants and, a shirt made out of hide. It was obvious needle craftsmanship and such. And this thing just stood there and looked directly at the soldiers. It had what appeared to be a beard. It's obviously too far away to see hair color or any other thing, but it did where it was wearing visible some sort of visible clothing, but not clothing that, this looked very strange. Almost like ancient Native American or ancient human kind of leather crafting. And it's about 16 feet tall, maybe a little taller, because he was guesstimating its height using the top of the corral as it's running to get that 9 feet thing at the shoulder. It's towering over that now. It turns and looks at the soldiers. It turns and looks at the cabin, and it literally locks dead eyes with both guys. He said, when I looked, he said I could see its freaking eyes, and my eyes connected with it, and its eyes connected with me. And he said, I felt my soul leave my body. He said, it was fear beyond fear. He said, because what I imagined, he said, instantly, looking at those eyes, instantly, he said, I saw that thing running towards us and smashing through this cabin and killing me and my friend. He said, thank God it didn't happen, but that's what it was like. He was envisioning this. And it turns and looks, and it walks 4 feet into this kind of void. This very strange, it was not bright. There was no light. There was just like an opening, this black kind of opening. And it proceeded to just walk into, you could see nothing. It was just this void, and it was gone. There was no kind of extraordinary bright lights when it opened and when it closed, or when it disappeared. It was just... And he looks at his friend and he said, I have no idea what that was, but I do not want to be here anymore. And his friend's like, same. He goes, we should probably, he goes, but it's dark. What are we going to do? They're standing there looking, and they see these soldiers come running over to where this thing just disappeared. And there's, we're talking 16 guys with modern day firearm. This is 2008. And all of a sudden, two of the soldiers look back at the cabin and kind of cock their head to look and see. And Ray kind of just waves like, hey, we just saw this whole thing. We just saw everything that happened. One of the guys who probably in charge of these two teams, he walks over and he's got a guy with him he has comms on him. And he says, listen, he said, just like the Rangers, Ray, da-da-da, and da-da-da-da-da. Unfortunately, we know that you were leaving tomorrow. But we got to ask you to, one, you're going to have to leave now. Two, you're going to have to come with us. And, there's no questioning about anything right now. Just get your shit together and put out the fire in the log stove. And just, get your packs and wait here. Wait. We'll accompany you out of here. They go in and they get dressed because they're in their like night clothes. They're PJ rolling. They're and they get dressed and they go back out into the porch and they're standing there, and the person in charge looks at the guy and, he says ETA, and it's kind of like this, and something like 7 minutes or something. And they're trying to ask what's going on. They're trying to get some sort of answer. His friend, is really irritating this gentleman who is in charge here. 7 minutes exactly on the dot, a little bird, you could hear it coming in, literally lands. Two soldiers, not the guy in charge or the guy with the comms, two soldiers walk up, grab their bags, bring them to the little bird. The one in charge says, let's go. And he said, I could feel, he said, it felt like they had, if we didn't leave, or if we pulled any kind of shit, that we were going to get shot. He said it literally, like, the tension level was so high. He said, and I turned to look back at the cabin. He said, and I could see the other soldiers. Few were looking over to where that thing was and disappeared. But a few were looking at us. And they all had their rifles. He said, I didn't know if it was for us, in case we pulled something, or if it was for whatever that was. He said, but it almost seemed like they were willing, or had we done anything like we're not going, or protested getting in that helicopter, that they would have taken us out, no problem. He said it would have been, and some sort of fucked up cover up story would have been made. They get on the helicopter. The gentleman that was in charge, or that was giving commands, looked at one of the other soldiers and said, until I come back, get the guys out of here, head back to where, the rendezvous point is, meet up with everyone else, let everyone else know what happened, and we'll be back after we take care of this. And gets on the helicopter. Ray looks at the guy, and the guy says, so what you saw right now, we don't have an answer for you, but where I'm going to bring you, where you are going to be brought, will have those answers. But as of right now, the large portion of the park is closed, and we have to accompany you out here for your safety and also for national security. And his buddy starts to kind of say something. Now, exactly how Ray said it, he said, and it was at this point of him sharing the experience, because he's like, and if you can't tell by now, as how I've listed and how I've told you everything that my friend does, is he's kind of a dumbass. Yes, but he lacks in tact. And when shit kind of goes sideways, he will be pretty demanding. And he's not a pushover. He's a dumbass, but he's not a pushover, just like I'm not. It's just, so his friend starts to say something, and he could hear it in his tone. Ray could hear it in his tone. And he put his hand on his arm and just squeezed it and looked at him like, shut up. Just shut up. Let's not do anything or say anything to get us in trouble or possibly not here anymore. They are flown from Thoroughfare all the way to a section called Cannon Village. They land in a parking lot, which is just, he's not asking questions, his friend's not asking questions, but there's a lot of questions that they want to ask. They're terrified right now. Like, they just saw 16 U.S. soldiers, what appeared to be some sort of special forces, judging on the insignias and such on this one soldier that's with them, the helicopters and such. They just saw this, and they also knew that there were more soldiers elsewhere, because the rendezvous point, like, he's gathering all this information. And some massive creature that was humanoid, definitely humanoid, but was definitely some sort of very similar to an ancient whatever, that for some reason these soldiers were chasing, and then it disappeared into some sort of void. And now they are landing in this isolated parking lot. As they get out of the helicopter, a Suburban pulls up, and their bags are put in the back of the Suburban, and two guys get out of the Suburban. They are not in military garb. They are in kind of like a suit, black kind of slacks with a black kind of button shirt, no tie, and pistol holsters on their shoulders, shoulder holsters. One has his hand immediately on his pistol as they're getting off the helicopter, looking right at Ray and his friend. And the soldier looks at him and says, like, no, you're good. You're good. And they're get in here. As of right now, you are detained by the United States government, and as of right now, national security, this and that. You will be questioned and possibly debriefed when you get to where you need to go. They are then from Canyon Village, Wyoming, driven to Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, where they are then escorted into a isolated room, separated. So he's separated from his best friend, and they are kept separated and waiting for 12 hours. He has his watch on, so he's well aware of what's going on. When this 12-hour mark is up, it's not 12 hours exactly, but it's 12 hours and then some. They are both then, after being separated and no one talking to them, no water, no food, nothing, no any kind of human kind of talking or nothing, no contact with any human. Then they are brought into this room together. They're sat at a table and both just sitting there like, hey, are you okay? I'm good. Are you okay? Yeah. And they wait some time, about an hour maybe. It's almost like they were purposely brought there, messed with, to show, hey, you don't have any power. We have the power. We can do this to you. And you know what? You have to accept that we are doing this to you because we'll make you disappear. That's exactly what he's thinking. So, and he looks at his friend and he says, whatever happens, he goes, just shut up. He said, don't ask any questions. He said, just, follow my lead. And hopefully we'll get out of here. He goes, but we're at Malmstrom. And he said, whatever happens is not really going to be great for us. So let's just play this as cool as we can so we do get out of here. He agrees. And they are both then, a gentleman walks in. He's dressed in a black, kind of very plain black suit. All black button up, black slacks, but a black sports jacket, along with a high command military officer. And what is said is essentially, we're not even gonna play the game. We're not gonna make you, sign NDAs. We're not gonna ask you questions. We're just gonna tell you this word for word right now. If by chance you tell anyone what you saw, what you witnessed, and what went down, we will deny it, We will then make you look absolutely crazy, to the point where we will mess with you so bad, your families will not trust you. They will think that you have completely lost your mind and that you are untrustworthy, and, so proceed with caution. Once again, we're not going to act like you didn't see anything. We know what you saw. You know what you saw. We're not going to tell you you didn't see that, because we're not going to play that game. We already know about your military record, which he had a very good, spotless career. And we already know who you are. So, best bet, just shut up. Don't say anything. And your life will be fine. If you do say anything, we will once again deny it. And meaning, if you go to the news right now or within the next couple of days, we will ruin your life. It's been now 16, 17 years. And, it's time, he feels it's time that came out, because he's been watching all of the larger state parks in the area. And there's periodically times where a large tract of land in a state park will be closed. Not just a trail, not just, random upkeep, but a large portion of land. And he thinks, whatever's going on is something to do with whatever he just witnessed, whatever he and his friend had witnessed that night. He believes that whatever they saw that night was obviously something that was definitely supernatural, definitely huge. They've talked about it amongst themselves, him and his friend, and they both believe that it was not any kind of Bigfoot. They both clearly saw, once again, it was getting dark. They could not see color of hair, but they could see a beard. It did have longer hair, and it was wearing some sort of what looked like leather, needlecraft kind of clothing. Mountain giant is the first thing that popped to his head. He is in communication and with other people that have had experiences like this in that area, because believe it or not, a lot of people have had experiences like this in that area. And he said something interesting to me. He said, where this happened makes me wonder if all of these national parks have some sort of, supernatural or some sort of paranormal, whatever you want to call it, powers. And he said this so interestingly to me. He said, Jeff, I know you've mentioned this person. I know you look up to this guy. He said, I know that he had mentioned you once or twice on his website. He goes, but do you think there's a reason why Stephen Quayle is located in Montana? And I said, holy shit, dude, I never thought about that. I always thought because, that's where he was initially from, or whatever. And he's like, I don't know where he's initially from, but I find it kind of interesting that, he deals in precious, silver, gold, and such, but also has his giant Nephilim research, God research, angelic research, and all of that kind of high strangeness. But the Montana thing is kind of what got him. And I'm like, that is very interesting. And he said, I wonder if it's to be close to the action. And, that kind of blew me away a little bit, because then I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it really did make sense to me, because after he had said that and we stopped talking, I went back and I was like, when he had mentioned my channel on his website, I remember looking at it because I was so happy. I look up to Stephen Quayle. He's a truth teller. He's a truth seeker. And to me, he's, just someone that I inspire to be like. He's very intelligent, and just he knows where and what is going on, and he spreads the news. There's a reason why he deals in precious minerals or precious metals and writes amazing books like Unearthing the Lost World of Cloud Eaters and more. So maybe that is a reason why he's located out of Montana, is to be close to the epicenter of whatever is going on with these giant light creatures. Maybe Yellowstone is the epicenter of where these giant creatures are coming out of in North America. We know that they come out of everywhere, random locations throughout the world. Solomon Islands, the Amazon, parts of Central America, Mexico. Giants have been spotted all over the world. It's just interesting that, this happened in Yellowstone, Wyoming. In Wyoming, they were then brought to Maelstrom in Montana. I don't know. I don't know if there's a connection or not, but it was just interesting how he said it, And it's a insane set of events. And he said, the last thing he said was, we went there for an adventure, to be in the most remote place in the lower 48. And we left with an adventure that neither one of us could ever even imagine would happen in the most remote part of the lower 48 states. And he said, I feel lucky to be alive, because from the second we saw the first two helicopters, I knew something was not right. I knew something was clearly not going to go our way. And he was right. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for supporting this channel. It is, after all, your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant. Keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.